The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, and welcome to today's Field Service webinar, Building a Business Case for Field Service Technology, sponsored by ServiceMax. So we have a great speaker calling in today all the way from Amsterdam. So Patrice Everline. Patrice is the Vice President of Global Customer Transformation at ServiceMax, where she uses her years of service delivery experience working with prospects and existing customers to fully leverage the value of ServiceMax to their field service organizations. So just a little bit of a reminder for these webinars, we would like the audience to be aware that we'll be saving about 15 minutes or so towards the end of the presentation for a live Q&A session. We're going to answer any questions that you have throughout the presentation. So if you could, please refer to the questions or the chat box below and submit any questions that you have to our panelists. So any questions that we can't get to today will definitely be addressed privately following the webinar. So that's about it on my end, and without further ado, let me pass it over to Patrice.
Great, thanks Elise, I appreciate it. Good morning everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you are. Thank you so much for joining us today. As Elise mentioned, my name is Patrice Everline, and I work in customer transformation at ServiceMax. And we're going to talk today a bit about building a compelling business case for investment in field service technology. Now, often when I listen to webinars and attend these types of events, I always find it helpful to understand a bit about the person leading the discussion. So I'll give you a high level, just to give you some context on me and kind of my background, and then we'll jump right into it. I hope you find it very compelling yourself. So I've had almost 20 years in professional services, ranging from implementation to training, change management, deployment, and adoption. I've been with ServiceMax actually for coming up on 5 years or so, and although all of my career has been focused on providing and enabling solutions for customers, it's really here where ServiceMax is relentless, not only on providing those solutions, but on truly understanding the challenges and the business of field service, both the current landscape, where you all are living right now, as well as future trends and challenges that you're dealing with. We also believe that to be a strong and positive partner for our customers, we really need to have a vested interest in all things field service. So part of that is what this session is all about, really understanding and articulating a compelling and effective business case with field service specific returns. So let's jump into it. I've organized the topics into roughly 5 big areas. We'll do initially kind of a quick level set on the importance of field service management systems and what we're actually seeing in the industry as a changing maybe tide of opinion, or certainly an action and activity level on investments of this type. We'll talk a little bit about traditional approaches to evaluating technology investments and why they may not quite hit the mark and may fall short. I want to introduce you to business value realization approach and really to field service specific metrics that are going to help you move the needle and elevate your field service organization and your field service business. And then we'll go into a framework around a comprehensive business case, what's included in that, how to develop that, and wrap up with some best practices on your process there and providing the best case possible. So, I think you'll probably agree that field service for years and maybe even decades has been under-prioritized when investing in systems and tools, not only for your technicians, but for your dispatchers, your back office, your service leaders, everyone that manages the organization. Now, whether you're with a company that manufactures as well as services equipment, or whether you're with a company that really just solely services, you've probably experienced that spotlight really shining on your service organization to do more with less. And from a technology perspective, well, the industry has historically been judged a laggard there as well, with most organizations either working with paper-based systems or largely legacy service management systems. Over the years, these systems have made do, and I guess I'll call it virtual duct tape and string. We've been holding hard investment dollars to a minimum. And we all know it's time for a change, but I've often seen folks having trouble securing those investment dollars to really drive the transformation that they want to make in their organizations. I recently had a conversation with one of my customers who's a national field service leader, and they were kind of chuckling with me on the side, talking to me about, their dispatch system was what came out of the punch card era, and it pretty much stayed there. And it's been years and years, decade even, before they've looked at updating and upgrading their systems. And it certainly felt like they were on the back shelf and not being paid much attention to. For them, and maybe many of you, the past defined your service organization really squarely, and in some cases solely, as a cost center. And doing that, of course, relegates influence and impact on the business to rather indirect contribution methods. But we have good news. And the good news is that that situation is getting much, much better. Modern field service companies are changing up the rules of the game. They're becoming more to their organizations than just support arms with that traditional cost center mentality. Service is being taken seriously and is finally, at least in our view, being given the respect it deserves. We kind of think of this as a well-earned seat at the strategy table, and with that, the purse strings are starting to relax as well, and the ability to invest in updated tools and systems is being viewed not only as prudent, but as required in order to effectively compete in today's global market. So the time it's perfect for us to relook at the metrics that we run our business and invest in systems and tools that will allow our teams to spread their wings and really do the key things that I'm sure you're familiar with. Provide best-in-class service to your customers, further your revenue goals, increase efficiencies, and of course increase that customer loyalty. So here's an interesting data point that might surprise you. It surprised me. It arises from a mobile application study by Frost & Sullivan in 2013. And in that study, it was found that, are you ready for it? 55% of respondents named unclear ROI as a chief barrier to implementation and securing those investment dollars. Now that was kind of surprising to me, but in order to get investment monies for these tools, apparently we've got to approach things differently, and differently than perhaps we've done in the past, which has typically been, well, somewhat one-dimensional. So let's take a look at those traditional tools. And I'm going to start with the ROI and TCO tools. And before I do that, let me tell you, kind of alert, big alert here, red flag, these are broad brush strokes only. I am certainly not meaning to paint all tools with the same brush, but I do want to show some major themes. And although I'll expect that within our audience here, there's a huge range of company profiles, you probably have different verticals, different specialties, cultures, strategic priorities. Although we have that, and I may show some examples reflecting one or another type of field service organization, the concepts are absolutely adaptable to any profile. So let's take a look at the ROI and TCO. ROI, return on investment, TCO, total cost of ownership. Basically, these tools have their roots in financial environments. They have solely a cost focus. They are very realistic in that, and hence our couple of check marks there, because they are tied directly to finances and to value. But they don't necessarily take a look at the revenue focus and the potential benefit in that way that we're seeing as companies move from that cost center mentality to that profit center mentality. And because of that, they're really not comprehensive as a general rule. In addition, they lack a little bit in having some field service specific targeted metrics and tying that to the field service business. So ROI and TCO tools have their place, not necessarily as comprehensive as what we need today in order to secure those investment dollars. The next type is benefit calculators. And you'll probably chuckle at this. I have a very good friend who's a CFO who told me on the side that these calculators are typically called vendor calculators. I'll call them kitchen sink calculators, however. And what I mean by that is with these calculators, every possible and potential benefit is included as expected, and typically expected to show immediate results. So there's a helium balloon analogy here, because these benefits aren't necessarily tied down solidly to the business and the ways that the business is operationally managed. So to some degree, they rely heavily on, oh, dare I say it, hope as a strategy. So we have a couple of check marks here, but we have room for improvement. Now at ServiceMax, and I will take my ServiceMax hat on and off here, so forgive me a little bit on that, we use something called business value realization modeling. And it's a little different. I'll put all green check marks up, but let's talk about that. It certainly has cost as a focus, but as well as revenue, because we have organizations out there that are focused in both of those veins, and most companies and most organizations are pulling together a much more comprehensive and 360-degree view of the services organization and its contribution to overall company revenue and bottom line. We focus on field service specific metrics that are typically used to run your business. We'll talk about some of those shortly. We're very realistic and I believe to some degree conservative. We certainly rely on and include industry benchmark data, and I'll definitely get to some of that as we move on through here, as well as customer reported results, just to give a better flavor and a better well-rounded approach to this. Needs to be realistic. It needs to be realistic about ramping. It needs to be realistic about what-if scenarios. If it is, then you're going to get that much further in building a strong business case. And it is a comprehensive way to evaluate these technical investments as long as it's used as part of a business case, where you're clearly articulating the connection to the overall business, the goals, the gating challenges, the objectives, etc. Now, probably the key and arguably the two most important things missing from some of the traditional calculators are around connection to the business. So let's start there and take a moment to take a look at the business. So any tool that you choose needs to make an impact on the goals you set and the challenges you face. So what keeps you up at night? I'm sure some of these that you see on the screen resonate with you, whether you're doing primarily preventative maintenance business. Maybe you're looking at large pieces of equipment with larger MTTS or mean time to service values. You might have field technicians that have multiple day projects. You might also do maybe primarily break-fix work and have multiple jobs per day. Either case, you have things and challenges that are keeping you up at night, and you're not alone. You're not alone because each of those challenges you face has hooks into key field service metrics. The Service Council surveyed some 226 field service organizations, asking them to share their key metrics, the things that they're supposed to improve on and target. And as you can see here, there are a lot of them, with revenue in this study at the top of the agenda for service leaders, closely followed by reducing costs, improving satisfaction, and increasing productivity. So think about your own business. I would imagine that some of these resonate with you as well. However, as we are all too aware, we have a rather dynamic business environment out there, and there are a lot of challenges that are facing field leaders today that might be new. Above and beyond the standard revenue, efficiency, loyalty, productivity, all the things that we probably can just recite by rote. You know, Aberdeen did a study in May of 2014, and they found that top challenges now include things like workforce turnover and an aging workforce, and tribal knowledge escaping. This is pretty impressive stuff, and I'll go out on a limb here and predict there are probably a few more challenges that have cropped up in your individual lives, things that might be, well, how about preparing for the Internet of Things and machine to machine, or addressing customer experience, maybe in ways you haven't done it before. And of course, that technician role is changing quite a bit as well. So we're going to see these challenges continue to evolve and continue to push us. But beyond the executive push to achieve, we also have competitive pressure. We need to evolve and stay relevant, to get close enough to our customers that we're able to provide service head and shoulders above the competition and really differentiate ourselves as best-in-class players. And I know you do this all day long, but even best-in-class organizations are constantly striving to improve on their statistics, improve on their offerings, and include such things as providing better information to the technicians, that just-in-time 360-degree view of the customer while they're out in the field, rolling out standards globally. I hear that a lot with our customers, with companies that we work with every week. It's these challenges that field service leaders are dealing with. It's these challenges that you're dealing with. It's these objectives that are making a difference to overall company performance. And here's the kicker. The execution and accomplishment of these goals have to be part and parcel of any case for investment in technology. Remember that service margins are still, well, on average, they're almost 11% higher than equipment margins. So service organizations are primed to get mind share of the C-suite. Enter the business case. Let's talk a bit about the business case. For those of you who have not used this approach before, I'll first say that the specific elements and the order of the elements may come in different flavors. And some of you who have used this approach may have formats or perhaps parameters that your company has set up and dictates. But essentially the pieces are similar, if not the same. The impact of the business case is that it connects the dots. It provides stakeholders with answers to the questions like, what's in it for me? What's in it for us? What's in it for our company? Honestly, for those of you who are new to this approach, even the process, just the mental process of thinking through and building a business case can provide both you and your stakeholders just a greater comfort level as you go through. So don't skip on any of these pieces if possible. Taking a look at them, there are a few building blocks and then a couple that really are important and can make or break that business case. So first of all, business objectives. What are you trying to accomplish? You no doubt have company strategic goals as well, and making the connection between the field service organization objectives and overall company goals is going to set you up for success. Underlying problems. What are those gating problems and challenges you face in executing on your objectives? If you can set up a thought in the minds of the C-suite that if I could just fix X by implementing some new technology, I could accomplish this priority for the business and contribute to this priority for the company, you're locking in the why, and you're going to get that much further ahead. Now, stakeholders are interesting. Who is impacted and involved? And as importantly, what are the key messages to those stakeholders that might resonate specifically to them? And I'll get into that in a moment because there are some recent examples of things that might surprise you in that arena. Of course, solution recommendation, that's probably pretty self-explanatory, I would guess. But you'll notice I skipped over a couple of the building blocks, and those are key metrics and financial modeling. This is really where the rubber meets the road, and where we break out of using those traditional calculators and focus instead on financial modeling around field service, around the metrics to running the business, and the metrics that, if improved, will benefit the business. Now, because these things are all specific to field service, we aren't pulling down those helium balloons that we saw. These levers they're solid. And more than that, they have staying power. As you move past the evaluation phase, let's say that you get a resounding yes and you go out and you pick a solution and you're going to implement them. These metrics and this business case provides the focus for the implementation team and ultimately for your continuous improvement. So together, we call these two pieces, the key metrics and the financial modeling, value realization modeling. And here at ServiceMax, we use kind of a comprehensive approach to pull them together. I'll show you that here. Now, the approach is transparent, it's defensible, it's metrics-based. It is also conservative, as you'll see in a moment. Now, I'll confess to being a bit ServiceMax here, but stay with me as the concepts can be really important as you develop your own business case. There are three big inputs in this funnel. There is defining the business data, the business information, where you are now. Of course, somewhat obvious is the investment data, what you're looking to spend on a new technology or a new field service management system. Third is prioritization, and this is prioritization of metrics and benefits, but it's based on your specific business goals and culture, and it has an overlay of realism on what improvements you can truly expect to make. You know, there's an old saying, what is it? Don't try and boil the ocean. And you really don't want to try and boil the ocean if you're asking for investment dollars from a CFO, because they will see through that in a nanosecond. So what you end up with by using this type of approach is a very solid and conservative ROI. And here's the best part, plus a list of additional benefits that, while they shouldn't be discarded, these are icing on the cake. This is upside. This is stuff that will really impact you overall. So let's take a look at those field service specific metrics. There are a ton of them. Now, I won't build this slide for you bit by bit. I'm going to do a quick overlay, and you're probably going to try and start reading all of those. But these are the metrics that we typically hear of, and these are the ones just off the top of my head. I am sure each of you can think of at least 20 or 25 metrics that you use to manage your own business. Well, we looked across all of our customers and the various businesses they're in, and we wanted to come up with something a little more realistic than using all of these variations on a theme and risking being kind of overachieving that benefits calculator. Enter what we're going to call the Universal 9. Now, these are 9 core metrics that bridge type of company, vertical, region, even strategy. And these are the metrics that form the core language of field service management really around the globe. Now, each are intimately involved in the management of service teams, whether you manage your own FTE team, field team, or whether you work with third parties, which is really increasingly becoming commonplace. Each can be present in some form across reactive business, preventative business, install, and other business lines. Now, I will say that some of you probably operate within the confines of a cost center. Others may operate within confines of a profit center. ROI is different depending on that. So there might be some mental modifications that you'll make as you go through and take a look at these as we will. And some of the metrics may not be as impactful as others for your particular situation. That's all okay. But having worked with and spoken with as a company to literally hundreds of organizations, we're going to go out on a limb here and we're going to say that if you aren't measuring at least 4 to 5 of these things, you probably ought to think about doing so. So back to value realization. You know, I'm a bit conservative by nature. And honestly, I guess I'm a bit of a data geek. So as I'm building a business case, I want to make certain that my objectives and challenges are aligned, and that I understand the operational metrics that I'm expecting benefits from, and therefore the ones I'm going to focus on as I execute. I definitely don't want to double count. I don't want to overestimate. I don't want to inflate, and I don't want to accidentally throw off my analysis and therefore my business case. If that happens, well, I think we can both see the writing on the wall. We can certainly count on finance taking expected returns and doing a little slicing and dicing, right? Cutting them in half, maybe cutting them in half again, and then most likely again just for good measure. And of course that can kill any business case if we've overextended ourselves. So that said, let's not use all of the metrics out there to manage field service, but let's select a handful, let's say 5. 5 simple defensible metrics upon which we will include financial modeling as a basis for the rest of our business case. Now, the particular 5 may vary by company. And from a ServiceMax perspective, when our sales organization works with companies, the specific 5 are selected jointly to be the most important to our companies, our customers, as well as the most impactful from an expectation perspective, things that we can solidly tie down to executable strategy. For purposes of this conversation, I'm just going to use the 5 most common that I see as a starting point in order to give you some solid examples. So I'm going to go through these fairly quickly, just so we can get to the modeling and business realization, but they're in no particular order. Probably very familiar to most of you. First one is attach rate. Now, attach rate is typically a calculation of the number of contracts divided by the number of customers. However, some companies may define it as a percentage of products under contract. Either definition is fine. There are many flavors of many metrics out there. It's the increase in this metric that we're focused on and the movement that you'll be able to achieve given a technology solution. Attach rates can be shown at point of sale or post sale. For those organizations that, well, they miss an opportunity to sell a contract at the point of sale, well, this can be huge. The long-term annuity stream can be the lifeblood of companies. So really getting all you can out of those long-term annuities is key. So when field service organizations look at attach rates, we're looking at 2 things. We're looking at perhaps picking up some of the slack of contracts missed at point of sale, as well as adding on to existing contracts. This can be very important to service team contribution and therefore very impactful to our business case. Second metric is actually 2 metrics. It's contract leakage and warranty leakage. This is my convenient will work for free metric. Leakage is when parts or services are given away to a customer at no charge due to thinking that the customer really deserves them, is under contract or warranty for those. And this can be, and actually is often, because, for example, a field service engineer doesn't, well, they might not have an easy way to check entitlements while they're sitting in front of a customer at a customer site. That can always be a little tough. Many companies don't know how big of a problem leakages really are because they may not be able to measure them currently or with their older systems or their legacy systems. And maybe they know what it is, but they don't necessarily want to admit it's a problem. Although there are absolutely situations where that no billing of services or other items is appropriate, you might be very surprised at how impactful plugging these leaks can be to your bottom line. A first-time fix, FTF, this could be the single broadest metric upon which we can move the needle in your field service organization. If you can avoid a truck roll, you're not only saving those dollars, but if you consistently have lower first-time fix percentages than your competition, you effectively need more capacity in your field team just to keep up. And we all know how expensive that is to get extra capacity out of our field teams. Now, for those of you that may have longer MTTS, mean time to service numbers, increasing first-time fix rates may not save enough time, let's say, in a particular day or a particular week to do an additional truck roll or perform additional work orders. But let me have you think back to some of those challenges you're facing and to your goals for the next year. Whether you are moving towards, say, a servitized business model, or you're just looking to provide your customers with an experience that is a cut above your competition, getting some headroom in that field team can afford you time to execute on some of your offensive strategies, and to do it without having to hire additional heads and incur all those costs, recruiting costs and onboarding costs and ramp time where they're not at full billable. Now, a few of you will probably catch that this metric is not part of the Universal 9. But while it's not part of the Universal 9, it can be very important to your finance office. It's an easy one to improve on with the technology systems today, and it has very defensible returns. You know, I had a customer a few years ago whose business case was made, well, made internally almost entirely on their manual processing, kind of alleviating some of that, as well as their long service to cash cycle times. Now, this was a company providing service tech teams and large pieces of lane change equipment and highway equipment for major infrastructure projects across the U.S. Technicians would be on project site and typically out of their home state, so they've done air travel to get there for weeks at a time. And by the time they got all their paperwork in, by the time those technicians submitted all the receipts and filled out their time cards and got everything in order, well, the time to invoice was already going to be long, but then you added to that the back office time to sort, read, convert all the information, enter it into the ERP, a typical net 30 on invoices, and this became very, very big. They were able to reduce their time to invoice to really a couple of days and divert a good chunk of the headcount to other tasks. So this was a big win for their size company, and service to cash cycle time can be a big win for our business case as well. Now, I do have a question for you, and you can kind of just answer it in your head. Do your organizations, and do you measure metrics like this? Do you benchmark against industry standards so you kind of know where you are and where you sit in the landscape? Are you a laggard in some areas? Are you pretty much average? Do you have some best-in-class tendencies out there? Using field service specific metrics in a business case is really most impactful if you know where you are today and you're able to show benchmark against others, and you have a solid plan on what metrics you expect to move to be where tomorrow. It's pretty impactful stuff, so use that. And I can hear some of you right now saying, but hey, what if I don't really know where I am? What if we don't measure those things, or we're just starting to measure those things, so I don't have a plethora of data that I can pull from? Well, that's not uncommon. Actually, in that case, using the data available together with your knowledge of, say, your competition, and even vendors' data, if you believe it to be solid, this can help you plot your current place. And additionally, speaking with my ServiceMax hat on, when our sales teams work with companies on their business cases, we obviously share as much data as we can, not only on those industry standards, but on the actual performance improvements that our customers have seen, straight from their mouths and straight from our surveys. So that can be invaluable when helping you fortify and build your business case, and certainly invaluable when you're looking at estimating improvements and want to be very realistic about doing so. The key is that you use reference data as appropriate to your situation and baseline your performance such that you can monitor and continuously improve. From the perspective of the business case, the key is to have solid, realistic data that you build that case upon, and that means focusing that value realization on improvements that are realistic. Field service-specific ROI tends to have a couple of core components. Service-specific business benefits, and these are the 5, and you'll see 4 bullets there. I kind of combine the leakages, but the service-specific benefits, as well as technology benefits. Now, of course, as I said earlier, don't ignore those additional benefits, as you'll no doubt find some hot buttons there, particularly for different stakeholders. But focus your ROI and your key 5, and you're going to create a much more impactful story for your C-suite, as well as showing them that you probably like the Office of the Finance and of the CFO like they do when they go about things. I have a little bit of an eye chart here, and I am showing a ServiceMax example, as you probably would expect, but this might help illustrate the connecting of the dots and therefore maybe increasing the confidence of your investment proposal. Where we're looking at here, we're looking at data, we're looking at benchmarks, we're coming up with expected improvements, and we're providing a good deal of information back to the financial modeling piece of your business case. You know, I had a customer recently whose CFO took a look at their service value realization expectations, including everything we've talked about, and he actually said to me that we were being a little too conservative, which honestly I'd never heard that before. That was kind of nice to hear. But what needs to come out of your financial modeling and your value realization is a core set of messages that resonates with that CFO, that Office of the Finance, and that supports the rest of the business case pyramid. For example, and I'm going to blow some of what you see here up a bit so we can chat about it. High-level return summary showing one-time and recurring costs. And this is important, expected time to implement and to ramp your field team and others. You don't want to hit the starting bell too early, and you want to be realistic about when you're going to get those returns. Cost benefit information is another key component. I like to show visuals here, but of course whatever appropriate in your case is terrific. Very important to the Office of the CFO is the ramp and payback time frame. Often we hear that go live is full realization of benefits. However, that just isn't the case. And if you're ramping your technicians, that's definitely not the case. I've even seen some business cases from previous lifetimes where somehow that implementation timeline isn't even taken into account. So you have to take into account the time frame to get that system up and running. And you have to take into account the time frame to ramp your users. And if you can do that, then you can start to set a realistic expectation with the board and with the C-suite on execution. So setting realistic expectations here is going to get you points in the finance office, but more than that, if you share the core of your business case with your implementation team, particularly as you start to implement, you're going to focus them on what you have deemed important. And here's the kicker: since implementation time frame is tied at the hip to return expectations, where you can see that net positive start and that net positive at month X, you're going to be far less likely to stray from that timeline without darn good reasoning, as extending that out will obviously push out the financial returns as well. So this is key to be down to earth about and be realistic about. Again, focusing on clearly showing key operational benefits that are specific to field service, so you can see where you're going to get your bang for your buck, where your focus is going to be, what your expectations are, is very important, as well as those key technology benefits. And I do have kind of a side note here on technology replacing technology, if you will. Remember that even in manual systems, you have real dollars spent on real people doing manual tasks that might otherwise be automatically or systematically done. Yeah, I had a customer just, I guess about 6-8 months ago, that was on a legacy system, and we were just chatting about kind of building their business case. That legacy system had been paid for long ago. And initially, they didn't see any benefit of the technology piece of their ROI or the financial modeling. That is, until that conversation came to, how many back office folks do you have dedicated to confirming, error checking, entering data into the ERP, reviewing time cards and expenses, all of that stuff. I found out that this gentleman happened to have 12 people dedicated to doing that for his field service organization. So obviously, even if you're not replacing a system, but you're replacing something more manual, or you're sunsetting part of a legacy, a bigger system, you have some benefits, and you want to articulate those. And again, just to kind of show you a high level here, don't ignore those additional benefits in your business case. You may miss out on some very important things to your stakeholders. Your investment case is built on the top 5, but the additional benefits, well, that's nothing but goodness right there. And I'll give you an example, which I have many examples on this. It always surprises me, but then again doesn't. I had a customer whose VP of HR was a stakeholder in all investment and technology proposals that would touch day-to-day work life of employees. That kind of makes sense when you think about it, right? And she had a personal goal of increasing employee satisfaction. Now, increasing employee satisfaction doesn't necessarily have this wonderful dollar figure associated with it. But she was pretty well bought into the business goals and the challenges, and she had heard a great deal from her own surveys as well as from the field team putting together their business case about employee frustration due to legacy systems and manual things and all that you probably hear and work with all the time. What she saw was a way to hit her MBO. And without seeing this on paper, without seeing that articulated as an ancillary or an additional benefit, she may never have made that connection. So it's important to do that, important to put that out there. So let's review a business case that will not result in unclear ROI. Outline the priorities and objectives of your business. Describe the gating problems, describe the challenges in hitting those objectives. Know and message to your various stakeholders, that's both decision makers and benefited teams, that what's in it for me, what's in it for us, what's in it for the company. Focus on key field service metrics needed to move the needle, and that you're going to focus on as an organization and improve as a result of the new technology and the new system. Of course, recommend the system and have the financial modeling to support all of the above. If you do all of that, you've got a winner. But there are a few best practices that we like to look at and like to think about. So let's take a look at them. First is keep it simple, keep it defined, keep it defensible. If you go off the deep end and put a bunch of things in there, you're setting yourself up for being cut, setting yourself up for your audience and the evaluators to make assumptions that maybe they shouldn't make. So keep it simple, defined, defensible. Target your payback for no more than a couple of years, and actually I like to see it in the 12 to 14-year month, particularly for enterprise or global customers. This is important. Many of you may have parameters within your own companies. I hear that a lot as well, that I can't bring a proposal for technology to my office of the CFO unless it fits within certain parameters, and that might be a payback of 16 months or whatever it is. So target payback for a reasonable period of time. Make your business case a business-led initiative. Tie it to your objectives. Make sure that there is a solid string hooking your challenges to your company objectives and showing that your field service objectives will help get them there. Don't forget those soft benefits. They're key. They can be key to some of your stakeholders, perhaps more so than you even realize. And of course, use the business case as a framework for your implementation focus and as a baseline for monitoring results. Good, solid best practices, but wait, there's more. Just a final note, something to think about, particularly in the world of SaaS, particularly in the world that we deal in now where things are changing. And please understand that certainly we understand that the companies we speak with today are not going to be the same companies we speak with next year or the year after or the year after that, because you are a living, breathing organism, and you will change your strategy to fit new competitive pressures, to fit new technology, fit that IoT and the M2M, fit the changing role of the technician. So your business case doesn't need to be and is not a one-time thing. It can be used in an ongoing fashion for continuous improvement, and particularly as you make larger strategic changes, that's a mouthful, for ongoing improvement. You're going to implement, you'll deploy, you'll monitor, and based on your environment and your competitive situation, you'll refresh that business case, and you'll refresh those goals, priorities, and metrics in order to, again, implement, keeping head and shoulders above your competition. So I hope that's helped. I'll pass it back to you, Elise, and we'll see if we have any questions.
Great. That was a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much, Patrice. So one of the questions from the audience came through, and it asked, who/what roles in the organization are typically involved in building this business case?
Oh, that's a great question, actually. Well, there are a couple of, I guess there are a couple of sides to that question. The first is kind of who do we see as receiving it? And, the cop-out answer is we see everybody receiving it, but I'll tell you that typically when you're talking about field service in today's day and age, you'll have representation from finance, even from sales, from marketing, from IT, that will be receiving that business case and working through it as a stakeholder group. particularly if you start looking at some of the metrics that are or supportive of sales goals, like upsell and cross-sell, or that attach rate post point of sale. If you're asking about who's involved in creating that business case, what we typically see are, well, the finance team, definitely a business analyst. There's usually one of those that's associated with the field service organization. Certainly the leaders in field service, as well as some of their key management, as well as IT, because it is technology, and we want to make sure, and really IT and the business can go lockstep together and just create wonderful things. So it's usually head of field service, some finance or analyst representation, and IT that would create that business case and would help prepare that.
Excellent. Okay, all right, next question. Oh, a few of you are actually seeing a lot of questions come through from the audience. Okay, so the next one is, how do you put a dollar value to MMTS reduction?
That's interesting. You know, you can do it in a few ways. You can certainly monetize kind of the time of the technicians, but when you look at anything around MTTS, MTTR, MTTI, which is repair, install, and service, you almost have to break it down a little bit further, because those numbers are most impactful when they're associated with a particular product line. So for instance, if I have some crazy MTTS on a particular product line, I might be able to articulate that as identifying problems that can be fixed within a production or a development or a manufacturing type of a thing. I've actually had customers who have said that their MTTS numbers in their business case was based around the fact that they can now measure that stuff, which will help their trending see how much money they're spending, the cost of quality, if you will, and that information can go right back to the procurement department when they're negotiating contracts from their suppliers. So MTTS, MTTI for install, MTTR for repair, those as big numbers, a little harder to put a dollar value on. You get a little more granular down to the product line, and you can start looking at the cost of quality and monetizing the effort and the time associated with technicians.
Excellent. Okay. All right, the next question is, okay, for items that current metrics don't measure, what are the best practices to estimate those? Contract, warranty leakage?
Yeah, I'm going to understand the question a couple of different ways, so let me see if I can hit that right. When you don't have metrics to know where you are, the way you can come about it, the way you can kind of get your arms around that, and again, you really do have to have kind of your conservative hat on at this point, is to use that industry data, right? Use what experts like Gartner and WBR and the Service Council and TSA, what they've been able to glean to give you a feel for what's out there. But then take a look, and I tend to pull the sales organizations in on this, take a look at your competition or where you are with that. So you've got a couple of inputs if you don't necessarily have measured perhaps some of that stuff before. Industry data is huge. Where your sales team and your executives feel you are in the competitive environment. And then this is going to sound maybe a little trite, but work with your vendor as well. And the reason I say that is if vendors have data from their customer base, it is much more likely that they know who those customers are, so they can narrow the field down for you and find some like companies. And that experiential data, that data from their customer set, can provide another facet of the diamond. And as you get more data, you're able to kind of come in a little bit on where you are. The other thing that you can do is certainly pick a company. I have organizations that know who their #1 competitor is, absolutely without a doubt. They may not know a bunch of those metrics. They may not have measured them in the past, at least over years or quarters, but they can tell me immediately that, hey, ABC company is my head competitor, and they're always taking my folks. I end up training new employees, and they leave and go over there, so we trade employees back and forth. They know a great deal about that situation. So if you're in that situation, let's take a better look at that competitor and see if we can start to make some assumptions. Now, assumptions truly won't be proven out until you kind of had a system and you're able to manage that. And that's a hurdle that a lot of companies face, because kind of have to jump into it at some point in order to get a data history to be able to trend off of it. But at least those two ways might help you start to approach it. And of course, we work with companies all the time and are able to help them secure those and make them a little tighter as far as expectations on where you are and where you want to be.
Excellent. Okay, set up for the next question from the audience. Reads, my organization has a legacy system that is superficially inexpensive, but probably has many hidden costs. Do you have a roadmap that has been effective at uncovering and quantifying those hidden costs in pursuit of a good move to a new solution vision?
Yeah, boy, that is an awesome question. I actually should have thought of that one to pull into the presentation. Yes, it is a conversation. It's actually something where we go back and forth and we ask you about that system. There are so many legacy systems out there. I used to work for an organization where I had 5 business units, and literally my staff was working on green screens as well as the latest in technology. So there are legacy systems that just come in all flavors. We actually work with our companies very, very closely to talk about those hidden costs, walking through a day in the life, talking about the different stakeholder groups that system touches. Do we have IT folks that are in a support role? How much of their time is spent supporting that field service legacy system? Do you ever have downtime? How often? Does that cost you any SLAs? Let's monetize that. Do you have training costs because you're constantly kind of bolting on functionality that is priority one? Is that something that is recurring or that you have to do one-offs all the time? Do you have application administrators that sit in your support organization? Do you have an escalation path if things go wrong? Do you have manual tasks that your field team is having to do that maybe will be avoided with the new system? Do you have ongoing warranty costs with the vendor? And that might be an internal vendor. It might be cross-charging. It might be, I've even heard of companies that are defunct and they're still paying maintenance to that organization just to provide base level question answering and that type of thing. So it's really not a direct, here are the 3 things you do, but it's much more of a conversation, and there are many ways to uncover those hidden costs. And it's always surprising as we go into that. Sometimes companies just assume that there's kind of 1 or 2 levels, and there could be a lot of tendrils that go into the organization quite deeply.
Great. Okay. All right, so we've got a few minutes left, so any other additional questions that any audience members have, feel free to submit them to us. And another one just came in, and it says, generally, the revenue of service is low as compared to vehicle/product sales. How has it been seen by CFOs? Is this on the priority list?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just making a note here so I don't forget all the questions. So the revenue of service lower than the revenue of equipment sales. My question would be, let's look at the profit margins of both of those. I would typically expect to see higher profit margins on those service revenues, and I would also want to know a little bit more about the particular company. Where are you now? Where are you moving to? I was just speaking with a guy yesterday who is taking his field service team, which has not been a traditionally high revenue dollar generator, although I'm out here in Amsterdam, so I guess I would say euro generator, but it's important enough that they're starting to look at ways that they can create additional offerings and broaden that, and broaden the number of offerings, which will, yes, raise that revenue, but it will also raise a very profitable margin on it. So revenue dollars, they might be low. Let's take a look at contribution margin to the bottom line, because that's where you're going to get the CFO kind of raising an eyebrow, particularly if you can start adding to that without having to add heads. You can increase efficiencies within your existing team. I have a customer that, no joke, was able to increase efficiencies within their organization, within their company. Now, this is a company, by the way, that does multiple jobs per day, but they were able to eke out just by getting efficient with their field service technology, putting mobility out there, they were able to get an additional capacity for 157,500 jobs per year. And that is without a single additional dollar of headcount spend. So that is hugely impactful. Yes, it was a large company, so some of you may have different situations, but it's really the contribution margin and how we can get more out of your existing team that'll help that become a better business case.
Wonderful. Okay, I think we might have time for one more question. This just came in, and from the audience, and it says, how do I get access to this ROI tool?
The question of the day. Well, we are absolutely happy to work with you. You know, a lot of these value realization tools come out from really good, strong conversations, and it's a process, like the question that was asked around how do I uncover some hidden costs in my legacy systems. So we're happy to engage. Typically, we work for at least some initial conversations, and then we help you build the business value realization with you, and then allow you to take it and use it however you want. So we'd be happy to engage with you on a one-off basis, and I can certainly address that offline with whomever is interested in that.
Excellent. So that looks to be about all the time that we have. And if there's no more questions coming in from the audience, we can end the webinar here. So I just want to actually take a few moments. I just want to thank Patrice so much, all the way in Amsterdam, for participating in this webinar, and I just want to thank the audience too for attending as well. And I know a few questions came through about the presentations and the slides being available, so I just want to let you know that they will be hosted soon on the Field Service East website, and you'll all be receiving information to view the replay and to view the slide deck through an email from us, so not to worry about that. If we weren't able to get to any questions that were previously asked, we can follow, or we can just continue from the questions that were asked. We'll be in touch directly to continue on the conversation. And we would also like to hear some feedback from everyone. So following the webinar, if you could just take a few moments and participate in the survey to share any comments or suggested topics that you'd like for us to discuss in future webinars, we'd really appreciate that feedback. So it's just to say, from ServiceMax and WBR Digital, I just want to thank everyone once again, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thanks for participating.
Thanks, everyone.